So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's webinar on the rise and importance of outsourcing, warehousing, and distribution. My name is Nirav Patel, and I'm a Senior Marketing Manager at UPS Global Logistics and Distribution, and I will be your moderator for this session. And I'm thrilled to guide you through an insightful discussion on a topic that's reshaping the landscape of global supply chains. So here's our agenda for this session, and I'll introduce the panelists. I'll define what outsourcing means. I'll provide you with a short market overview, and then we'll dive into a panel discussion. But before we begin, let's take a moment to introduce the panelists and acknowledge the expertise we have gathered here today. Joining us is a distinguished panel of experts who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience in logistics, supply chain management, and strategic outsourcing. So let me start by introducing our first panelist, Mr. Eddie Sissels. Eddie is a seasoned professional with over 25 years of experience in logistics and the supply chain industry, currently serving as the head of engineering at UPS Global Logistics and Distribution. Eddie plays a pivotal role in shaping the company's strategic direction. And next we have Scott Hertel. Scott is an accomplished professional with over 30 years of experience in logistics and supply chain, currently serving as the Director of Product Solutions and Strategy at UPS Global Logistics and Distribution. Scott's role involves creating and executing global strategies for the UPS distribution and fulfillment product. Scott is also a subject matter expert in the 3PL multi-channel fulfillment market and contributes significantly to UPS's success in this dynamic field. And last but not least, we have our guest panelist, Mr. Rick DeFiesta. Rick is an expert in providing consulting and system solutions for the entire supply chain environment as it pertains to product and data flow. As the Executive Vice President of Sales and Solutions at Geek Plus America, Rick heads the company's expansion in North, Central, and South America, including strategy, sales, and customer relations. Rick previously managed sales and operations in some of the largest material handling companies in North America, as well as implementing large automated systems on the customer side. Rick assists hundreds of customers with his decades of experience in distribution, order fulfillment, manufacturing, and assembly by implementing the latest technologies in complex integrated solutions. So Eddie, Rick, and Scott, welcome, and I look forward to our panel discussion. But before I start with a short market overview, let me start by defining what we mean by outsourcing, and specifically as it relates to warehousing and distribution. So outsourcing involves companies partnering with external service providers to manage their warehousing and distribution functions. And these third-party logistics companies, or 3PLs, handle inventory storage, order fulfillment, and transportation, allowing businesses to focus on core operations. Outsourcing allows companies to leverage the specialized expertise of their 3PLs, allowing them to streamline their supply chain processes and achieve cost savings. Now, let's set the stage with a brief market overview. So in recent years, we've witnessed a significant shift in the way businesses approach warehousing and distribution, especially after navigating the turbulence and uncertainty that came with the global pandemic. We all struggled with lockdowns, and from a business perspective, there were labor shortages due to illness, quarantine measures, and restrictions on movement. And for the warehousing and distribution industry, the scarcity and high demand for labor drove up the wage rate. With lockdowns and social distancing measures in place, there was a massive surge in online shopping. And the surge in e-commerce and the complexities of global logistics initially caused major disruptions to the global supply chain, as we all know. However, for the warehousing and distribution industry, this led to an increased reliance on third-party logistics providers. These providers have become pivotal in maintaining efficient supply chains, offering comprehensive solutions that include transportation, warehousing, and distribution. The pandemic further highlighted the need for resilience in the supply chain, promoting companies to explore outsourcing as a strategic solution due to changes in self-managed warehousing and distribution. And this has resulted in 3PLs dominating the demand for industrial and logistics space, impacting warehouse design and leading to industry evolution with concepts like fourth-party logistics and reverse logistics. So despite economic uncertainties, the long-term prospects of outsourced warehousing remained robust due to the sustained expansion of e-commerce and the strategic benefits of geographic coverage, cost efficiency, scalability, managing complexity, and operational flexibility offered by outsourcing. So as we proceed with today's discussion, we'll delve deeper into these aspects and uncover the strategic decisions that businesses face in this dynamic environment. So before we begin the panel discussion, let's poll the audience. We want to make it interactive, and we'll start by initiating a poll. So we'll give it a few seconds for everyone to put their responses, and then we'll begin the panel discussion. Okay, results are still coming in. Okay, it looks like it's slowed down. And can everyone see the results? All right, so it looks like the two winners are in-house and a combination of both. So that's really interesting. And that's good food for thought for our panel discussion. So without further ado, let's start the panel discussion. You heard me talk about, from a market's perspective, why people are turning to outsourcing logistics and distribution. So Scott, I'll start with you with the first question. And with your background in strategy and product management, it will be nice to hear your perspective on why are we hearing more about outsourcing logistics and distribution. So I'll start with you, Scott, and then we'll open it up to the panel.
Thanks, Nirav, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So, I think you kind of covered it a lot in your market overview, right? I mean, for me, it boils down to three things: complexity, flexibility, and cost. Supply chain complexity continues to increase. Consumer expectations, continue to shift, and we've seen a lot of that shifting in the last 4 years for sure. And one of the things that we talk a lot about is providing an ability to help you all meet your customers and the consumers where they shop. And those changes in consumer expectations and the channels and where they want to purchase can continue to change and shift. E-commerce continues to grow as a percentage of total retail, but it's still 20-ish% of total retail. So a broad multi-channel sales strategy and supply chain solution is required for success. And then with all of those channels, you have returns from each of those channels, which provides its own challenges and different operational requirements. And so secondly, then is flexibility. These expectations and the complexity, it's going to continue to change. It's going to continue to evolve. So when we talk about the flexibility and the need to have a flexible supply chain, certainly that includes shifts, volume shifts across channels. I think everybody on this call is largely aware that the requirements and the operating plan for setting up e-commerce fulfillment operations are much different than fulfilling to branded stores or fulfilling to national retailers. So you need a design, you need both the physical infrastructure and the systems to be able to manage fulfillment for each of those channels effectively, and be able to shift and change as those volumes adjust over time. But then more near term within the year, you have seasonal flexibility that's required. So each of those channels and also have different peak seasons and different levels of surges. So what's most apparent and talked about most is, the e-commerce peak, whether that's, Christmas holiday retail season during the winter, or it could be a summer sale or another type of holiday promotion that, drives spikes and challenges in order to still be able to maintain the consumer experience and the delivery experience, even as volume adjusts. You need flexibility within the design, within staffing, within your tech, to be able to handle that, which, then finally leads to, I'll say cost opportunities, but it's kind of cost and financial. So, from a cost perspective, one of the things that's really growing and adoption within the industry is fulfillment automation and technology and robotics. Joined here with by our friends and partners from Geek Plus, who are leaders in this space, and a lot of the innovations within fulfillment automation and tech, and we'll talk a lot more about this during the webinar, but yes, it does bring efficiency and opportunities for cost per unit and overall cost reduction. But the technology also provides some of that modularity and scalability and flexibility to handle the changing landscape and those dynamics. And then lastly, in terms of advantages or differences with outsourcing, there's an economics of outsourcing component as well. So those on the phone, when you're evaluating how to invest your capital, investing in in-sourced operations and setting up infrastructure and investing in tech and systems, there's a capital investment associated with that can become more variable, right? Which improves overall capital efficiency and some of the key financial metrics of your business that outsourcing provides an opportunity to improve.
And Rick and Eddie, I know you have some really good insights. I'll let you respond to that as well.
Rick, would you like to lead?
No, I'll go ahead and let you go, and because I know you have a lot to share, so I'll let you start.
All right. Well, as the seasoned individual on this webinar, I will lead and add on to the to what Scott provided. And Scott really hit on a lot of the key factors, which are really the evolution. Look what has changed, Nirav, from your intro of the previous 5 years, but what's going to happen in the next 5 years, and are you ready? So looking at the poll, 41% of in-house. Do you have the space? Do we have the people? Do we have the the intellectual capital or capital to invest in modernization to make you more flexible and scalable, and to really support your journey? I think that would be key. A few other things when we talk about the evolution is where you're going and making sure you have the setup and the infrastructure to be successful. So I think there's not a lot to add to this first section, as Scott alluded to, because we're going to get into really the meat behind the 3PL, the other service offerings, and the scalable, flexible, repeatable solutions that can be provided. So I'll just add that additional context before handing over to you, Rick.
Thank you. So to dovetail with Scott and Eddie here, what we're hearing from a lot of our customers, especially with the pandemic, they had a change of their business model. Some of the large retailers were attempting to fulfill orders out of their stores, out of their warehouses. They really didn't have a good roadmap or a plan, and recognized that that was the future for them. That customers wanted to buy e-com. So any of you that have gone through the process of looking for a building, getting the lease done, finding the staffing for it, getting the people that you can trust to run this extra facility, and then being able to get the labor. The time it takes by working with an outsourced partner such as UPS Supply Chain, it gives you speed to market, right? You're able to keep up with that potential flow, because we know how customers can be fickle, right? They want it now, and they can't have it sooner than now. So to be able to expand your footprint and service your customers has led to a lot of this outsourcing. The other is that, the planning for that. Do we want to commit to a 10-year lease or a 20-year lease, and only to find that your business model changes in that 10 to 20 years, whereas your 3PL outsource partners, they're kind of staying ahead of the industry, and they can kind of share what they're seeing from their other customers, with obviously with some discretion, but they know and can see where the market is going, so they can become your partner in what should you do to expand, what makes sense to expand, and to what level. And of course, there's companies that can help you go global, right? A lot of you may be strictly onshore, or you may be regional, where going with a partner that has this large footprint allows you to service a much larger customer base.
Some really great insights from our panel on our first question. And let me mention this to our audience. If you have any questions, please feel free throughout the webinar to put them in the Q&A section, and then we'll have a Q&A section at the end where we will answer those questions to the best of our ability. But let's conduct another poll before I move on to the next question. And this should be a nice tee up to the second question that I have for the panel. Okay, so the question is, select the top 2 biggest concerns when considering outsourcing to a 3PL provider. Okay, quality is ranking. We'll let the results come in, and we'll take a look together. I like the engagement, lots of responses coming in. All right, I think it's slowed down now. We can share the results. So you'll see quality of service is one of the top concerns, followed by cost. So that makes a lot of sense. And again, this will be a nice tee up to my second question for the panel here. So the second question, again, I'll start with you, Scott, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the panel. What are some things you need to know if you're a company considering outsourcing, or let me speak to the audience here. If you're a company that is currently managing your warehousing and distribution in-house, or if you're a company that currently works with a 3PL, what should we consider when outsourcing or upsourcing our logistics and distribution? So I'll start with you, Scott, and then we can open it up to the rest of the panel.
Sure, thanks. So, I mean, from my perspective, it starts with the vision for your business, right? So how and where do you plan to grow? What based on your strategy, what's critical for you to be able to penetrate the market, the way that you believe you have opportunity. What are those key success measures? Is it the customer delivery experience and delivery quality? Is it cost of delivery? Is it personalization or some other value add service that increases the engagement and builds brand loyalty and lifetime value? And then really taking a analysis and measurement of can you achieve these objectives through an in-sourced operation as your business continues to scale and change and grow. Or if you're with a 3PL today, how's your 3PL supporting those objectives? How are they partnering with you to accomplish those? And then I think specifically from when evaluating insourcing versus outsourcing, to me, I go back to books I read and what I learned long ago. Strategy really is about making choices of where you want to engage your limited resources. So not just within supply chain, but across the organization. and the amount of investments that are required, not just in tech and physical infrastructure, but Eddie mentioned human capital, the amount of investment in the expertise and the depth of expertise to acquire to be able to expand and grow your business in the way that you're planning to grow. Is there an outsourced option that allows you to capture that value and realize that value quicker with a broader team, a broader set of resources and level of expertise that allows you to achieve results in the near term, but continue to evolve with market conditions and continue to kind of grow and build on that success.
That's great. So let me bring back, let me refer back to the poll results, right? So we had cost being second, and then quality of service. So with that in mind, where do you begin the journey when you're thinking about outsourcing?
Okay, so I'll take the first stab at it. So, I mean, in terms of where to find qualified 3PLs, there's a few different avenues for that, right? So there's a lot of trade shows that many of us participate in to be able to just kind of see who the players are in the market, and be able to engage in relationships and speak to them. There are consultants available that specialize in 3PL supply chain and can really kind of help you navigate that experience and guide you along the way. And then referrals as well, whether that's through industry peers or even with your carriers that are dealing with a variety of different 3PLs, your account execs, they can provide some insight there. But so that's kind of how you can find the right parties to engage with. But my advice is kind of going back to the strategic component. As you're starting to engage in those conversations, really have a clear understanding of your business strategy and outcomes that you're targeting, so that you can engage in a real conversation and be clear on what your objectives are and what you're trying to achieve with your supply chain, so that your 3PL has an opportunity to craft the right solution for you that accomplishes your goals and is specific to your business profile and product characteristics, and everything that goes along with that.
Thank you. And I know, Rick, I cut you off last time, so sorry to interrupt your train of thought. Go ahead, Rick. Sorry, Eddie.
Go ahead, Rick, if you've got.
So, the fact that quality, of course, was number one. And I think that's really about, I hear a lot, this is not the way we do it, or this is the way we've always done it, right? And all of a sudden, you're being introduced to a company that has a different way of doing it. Obviously, they're providing a service for you, but it's sort of like, obviously, with owning a company, it's like your baby, and you grew it in a certain way, you did things in a certain way, and all of a sudden you're sharing, giving your baby to somebody else to handle it a different way. So so I can understand the quality, right? Because you've implemented processes that maybe you're doing a double audit, you're doing a lot of QA, you're double checking as you pack, you're doing a lot of other things, whereas the 3PL may have certain technologies that accomplish all those same things from the very beginning of taking an order to the time they actually put the order out the door. So there is a little bit of a trusting or a mistrust, if you will, as you turn your baby over. The other is that recognizing that the thing that we have a lot of conversations about is the cost of an error. And when it gets to cost, right? Because so quality is related to cost. All of a sudden, what is this company charging to handle an error, or what is the cost of that error? And a lot of companies take for granted things like, what did it cost to ship? What did it cost to pack? What did it cost to handle the return, put it back in inventory, inspect it? all those things are going back into, the cost of an error. Whereas a lot of times, your accountants are looking at just the cost of the item, right? Not all the process it took to bring it back and potentially resell it. So all of a sudden costs are revealed, or you're taking a different look at the way you look at costs and all the things related to that particular process or task. And at first it's really an eye opener in some cases when you really look at all the things that are related to, again, handling a return because of an error. So it starts with assuring the customer that what's going to be sent out is exactly what the customer requested, minimizing that amount of return or the cost of that error. So and again, that's what between automation and technology, that's what companies like UPS Supply Chain can assure their customers that that the quality will be high at a very competitive price.
Yeah, I'm going to build off of what you said. It can be very difficult to hand over your baby. 40+% of you maybe have spent your life nurturing that and growing that. But what does good really look like? Good to you, hypothetically, is what you see today. But what you've done for maybe 5, 10, 20+ years may be considerably different than what a 3PL is doing, that has done this hundreds, if not thousands of times, using those best practices, investing capital in, in physical assets, digital assets, and resources to keep experimenting on the edge of what good looks like. So that is becomes an opportunity. And then I'll kind of talk about cost and the cost of inventory. It's much more than a procurement play. Getting a good deal on your inventory, but if half of your facility is full of SKUs that are not moving, that has a cost associated as well. 3PL can provide information that may not be readily available through digital tools, forecasting. Again, the cost of an error of how can you streamline your processes using technology up to and including single piece flow. The fewer times you have to touch that product, the greater risk of accuracy, but the more you are touching it, again, the greater risk of a potential error. So when you talk about quality, that's where physical and digital technology can assist you. When you talk about cost, there are costs for picking, there are costs for packing, there are costs for shipping, there are costs for returns, and a 3PL can really break that out for you and look at each of those lanes and provide maybe some insights that you didn't think about before as it pertains to your business. And the last part about that, and we'll move on here, Nirav, is really around if you're spending your time on the quality aspect, the cost, and everything within the four walls, but you are the expert that created and built this business, are you not spending enough time maybe marketing and selling and growing your business and now having a bit of a joint venture? And again, back to the poll, some said both. And that may be an entry point for you, where you can spend more time of growing your business as a subject matter experts and partnering with experts in the 3PL space that can help you along that journey.
Really good insights. So let's switch gears now. Let's talk about a topic that I'm really interested in, that Eddie really got me interested in. It's about modernization and robotics. So I'll start with Rick and Eddie, since they are in that field and they work together very closely. How has modernization, specifically automation and robotics, changed logistics and distribution? So I'll start with you, Rick, and Eddie. We can open up to Eddie and Scott.
Okay, so what are we seeing? Well, you referred back to the pandemic, social distancing, and labor, right? So many of our customers, one of their biggest challenges is acquiring enough labor to be able to meet their needs. Many of our large customers are seeing at best 70, maybe 80% of staffing needed to run their operation. So, there's been always we hear the concern that robots are replacing people, but that's really not the intention or what's really happening here. It's really helping the productivity of the associates that are already there to be more productive so that you can operate with a reduced headcount for the headcount that you're not able to get. So with that in mind, what you're looking for is workflows that are easy to teach people. So in automation and these technologies, with a lot of the graphical screens that are used in these workstations, they're numbers and visual, right? They're by their nature, they're multilingual, so you can quickly train people of many languages to operate your system. And you can have people at pretty much, full productivity within the same day. One of the major challenges in a typical warehouse is the hunting and finding of things. In other words, where is aisle 4? Where is location 6? Where is it? So and then also operating the devices that they have, they're given, these handheld devices. What's F4? What's F12? And learning that. So. And they usually require somebody following them around for a while to learn the building. So, and in a lot of these newer technologies, goods to person is the core offering that we have. It brings everything to the customer and or to the selector. So it makes it very easy. They're directed to where they need to select the item from and how to pick it. So the other thing that also came about was social distancing. With having workstations that are dedicated and your personnel are in a workstation, it by nature created social distancing. They're naturally, when they showed up, they were probably 15, 20 feet apart all day long, and they had their dedicated space. So it allowed companies to be able to recognize all the rules that they were implementing to assure that there was social distancing and to take care of the well-being of their associates as they were doing work. So those are some of the examples of where technology is actually helped out, for our customers. So it's to offset labor that they couldn't get, create a workflow that was simple to follow, and in the case of the pandemic, allowed companies to operate and recognize the social distancing requirements.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll just build off of that. Again, if you've ever worked in your own warehouse, warehouses are large. Warehouses are high. If you're using material handling equipment, getting people MHE and PETO certified. The environment of robotics, of having goods to person and automated guided vehicles, bringing that to the individual, enhances our employee experience. One thing Rick alluded to was the multilingual, having a very diverse work group. Training can become difficult. Communication can become difficult around changes in your business, of a swing in B2B preparation for retail sales that are still going, while a shift in preparation for e-com on how we're going to put more volume through the facility. Automation and a modernized facility can provide you those capabilities. Another, again, a paper environment. When you're walking through a facility with pick tickets and an RF gun, or pulling a pallet jack or a bread cart, and you have a system issue, or you misplace paper, working with the 3PL in a digital paperless environment really, again, expedites and improves the quality and reducing cost for the individual. Another is really the interface, and I'll kind of close with the interface because we're quickly moving through time here. Is again, gamification. Again, making the job more fun. Again, looking at a color-coded interface, understanding, seeing the product, validating the product, having digital scales confirm that the right quantity and SKU were picked, helps that entire cost to serve, reduces returns and errors that are going potentially out of your facility and makes it much more inviting for our employees, which is super exciting from a 3PL perspective.
Yeah. So, Nirav, just one thing to add on that. I mean, I think, one of the biggest changes, and talked about a little bit earlier, is just the innovation in the tech and, the ability for these solutions to be modular and flexible. From my seat, from a product strategy perspective, I spend, most of my time working with, Eddie and folks like Rick and even our sales and solutions partners of, how can we leverage investments in technology on our side to create value, create scale across our customer base. And Eddie being the seasoned one here, back when we started a long time ago, when we went to automate an operation, it was fixed infrastructure, and the time to deploy and design and set up and everything was very costly, and it was a long time to set the infrastructure in place. But you were building for 3, 4, 5 years out around a fairly static workflow. But the technologies today are incredibly modular and scalable and flexible, which allows us, from a 3PL perspective, to react quickly to changes in the market and changes within our infrastructure that allows us to continue to introduce different layers of technology to create value, but also manage that at a network level to provide some variability in cost, variability in scale, that we can pass along to our customers, that makes your business a little more responsive to market changes.
So Nirav, let me add 2 things to that, and we'll move on to your next question for sake of time, because you just sparked.
Absolutely. Take your time.
Something there, Scott, is you hear the theme, things that are evolving in evolution. You hear scalable, you hear repeatable. Again, for the 40+% of you, you've probably made a very customized investment, and a very expensive customized investment that's more than likely bolted down. A lot of this new technology can be modular. Again, moving a QR code is much easier than moving bolted down physical assets that are very robust, that are very difficult to change. In a 3PL that is built and invested in traditionally very large facilities that can handle multiple clients with similar characteristics, gives you, the customer, the ability to flex between B2B, B2C, organic growth. But maybe, unfortunately, in the down times where your volume is reduced, a 3PL can scale down with you and provide that space potentially to another customer based upon the period of time that you need to get back out, sell, and rebuild your brand and your marketing and sales strategy. So yes, a lot of technology historically, very, very, very customized, very expensive, and not very agile. So with that, Nirav, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Eddie. Yeah, thank you, and thank you to the panelists. But before we begin the Q&A, let's end with our third and final poll question. So if we can launch that, please. Okay, so the question is, how interested is your company in using robotics and automation within your logistics operations? Again, some really good activity. We'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, I think we can reveal the results now. All right, so very interested and already exploring options is the number 1 answer, and then followed by interested but not yet exploring, and then close third is neutral, considering it for the future. So good information for us to know and our panelists to know. So what we'll do now is we'll shift gears now. We'll start the Q&A, and I do have some questions here submitted through the Q&A. I'll start with this first question here, and maybe I'll give this question to you, Scott. So, when considering a 3PL versus remaining insourced, how do companies ensure they don't become a small fish in a large pond?
Yeah, it's a question we get from time to time, and especially, when we're engaging customers, with the UPS brand, people are, naturally assume that there's we're this large organization that, where a small company may have a difficult time navigating. I would say from our perspective, from a provider perspective, we've been very vocal, in a lot of our messaging around serving the SMB market, right? So supporting smaller entities, customers that we can help, kind of grow and meet their objectives. As I think about how our relationships are set up with our customers, there's dedicated account management with each client, large or small. So, regardless of size, you have a personal relationship manager, personal connection within the organization. And then, that person really helps to kind of navigate the broader organization and really bringing, all components that UPS can offer kind of to your doorstep, and to your supply chain. So I understand the question. I think in practicality, what we've put in place is certainly a structure to help support that and continue to kind of nurture and grow that relationship over time.
May I add to that, Narav?
Of course.
All right, I appreciate that. Again, I'll kind of ask the question: what's small? What is small? Small in the eyes of an individual company versus small in the eyes of a global enterprise has a very wide definition. So I think one thing that Scott alluded to specifically, when you really hone in on, let's just say here with UPS, you have dedicated account management. You then provide the opportunity for yourself to potentially move from small to large because you have the ability to go and sell and go and market. You're not worrying about order fulfillment. You're not worrying about inbound transportation. You're not worried about all of the training aspects and staffing that we've talked about right now. What you're worried about is sending volume to the 3PL, the volume, pick, pack, ship, and deliver, and then continue to provide your opportunity to grow. So my final thoughts on that is there's no too small or too large of a customer, and again, I think it's all within the eye of the beholder. Is don't be intimidated from a 3PL if you're doing 100 orders a day or 1,000 orders a day. We have, there's a very broad range of the definition of small, large, or again, from an SMB perspective. So don't let that ever intimidate you from venturing out and exploring the 3PL market.
So, excuse me, I would add that, looking at, I think that the question is, how big do I need to be using a 3PL? Right. The thing about UPS supply chain is that many of their buildings are multi-client. And what does that mean? They have more than one customer. A lot of my 3PL customers, they have a tendency to pretty much dedicate a facility to one customer. So yes, you need to be large. But when you have a multi-client facility, what you're able to do is share the assets and share the experience that's in the building. So, Eddie pointed out that you may have an account manager, but that account manager is probably handling more than just your account. And within that facility, where you would, within your own facility, you'd be paying for a supervisor, a shift manager, other managers, and of course associates. Whereas if in your profile of your business that you really don't justify a full-time anything, right? When you do staffing and you look at, we talk about, FTEs, full-time equivalents, and you come out with numbers that are half a person. Well, you can't have a half a person. Well, when you're using your 3PL partner, you actually do. You actually can use the same person who might be managing multiple accounts. So they're able to spread the costs across infrastructure and personnel and management within that organization, something that you are not able to do. The other is, again, as mentioned earlier, is the broader footprint, where you internally may not be able to justify having 2 sites, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, whereas you can with your 3PL partner, if that makes sense, depending, especially if you may be bringing product in from using the LA port, using the Savannah port, and not having to ship things all the way across the country to be able to have it in that warehouse. Plus, you're able to have technology that says, we know where this is and where is it best fulfilled. In other words, my Midwest warehouse can ship it, and I have all 3 items this customer ordered, so I can help reduce my shipping costs compared to necessarily having all products in all buildings. So there's a multitude of factors when it comes to having working with a company that already has this broader footprint and all these resources that would be very difficult for you to have in-house. So I just would add that.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question, and hopefully we can answer a lot more of these in the short amount of time we have left. Next question is, what is the panel seeing regarding nearshoring and the trends in the industry to shift to a North American manufacturing and distribution of goods? Scott, Eddie, Rick, who wants to take that one?
Eddie, I'll take first shot at it, at least from our perspective. So clearly, we're seeing a shift. Some of the the disruptions that took place around the pandemic caused a lot of organizations to kind of reconsider their supply chain strategies, and nearshoring, both from a manufacturing perspective, as well as nearshoring distribution, maybe outside of the U.S. into the U.S. consumer market is really gaining, both in activity, implementations, and discussions. I think the last 2 quarters now, the leading importer into the U.S. has been Mexico, right? So that's being represented in the volumes and the level of imports that we're seeing here into the U.S. Within the market, and specifically within UPS, this is it's one of our top strategic initiatives around trade lane shifts. We've had certainly have cross-border solutions, and we've had a variety of different cross-border solutions for a number of years. But really understanding those changes in the market and changes in dynamic are putting a lot more emphasis in coming up with new connected solutions and end-to-end solutions. It's not just about where you fulfill from or where you manufacture from, but how do you connect that to the ultimate consumer or retail location? It's the end-to-end solution that certainly involves what happens in the warehouse, but from a brokerage and trade perspective, and ultimately final mile delivery, and creating that end-to-end solution that allows you to achieve cost reductions, minimize disruptions, but ultimately still provide that consumer experience and the retail experience that you're striving for.
Yeah, I think you've covered it, Scott.
So we've got a ton of questions coming in. I'm going to see if I can ask 2 more questions, but just to let the audience know, any question that is not answered, we will share. We will provide some answers after the webinar via email, so don't worry about that. So my next question is around returns, Scott, and I know Scott, Eddie and Rick, you all work in this domain. So the question is, returns are a major consideration for our company due to potential wear on returned goods. How is inspection of returns and decision-making on accepting or rejecting returns made by a 3PL?
Scott, do you want to take it, or you want me to? These.
Why don't you go first, Eddie, and then I'll.
Yeah, I'll go. So no. I think it's a good question. I mean, what have we all been conditioned to do? Order 3, because we don't know if it's this particular supplier, if I'm a medium or a large or an extra large. So you unfortunately, the industry has conditioned buy 3, keep 1, send back 2. So based upon the customer, and this is a combination of 3PL and the customer's alignment and agreement contractually, would be, what's the disposition? What do you want to do with that? You see a lot of your returns now, you're getting questions before it even is returned back, to the facility of, did you open the box? Has this, garment hypothetically been used, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, we have the ability of bringing in that return, again, digitally to understand where it's at, and then physically, once it gets to the facility, which characteristics or disposition. Do we want to return that as good stock, put it back into good inventory? B, it's used and it may be hypothetically liquidated. Or third, it is damaged and we want to either donate or discard of that. So yes, within the 3PL space, returns and reverse logistics are a very large component of what transpires in the warehouse on a daily basis.
Yeah, so a couple of things to add to what Eddie said. I think part of the question was specifically of how are the protocols set up for product inspection, and we work with our clients directly, really on the parameters and the inspection criteria for each customer, because all products are different, right? So it's not a one size fits all. But those steps are then programmed into the process, and as Eddie talked about, what's really key is being able to set up the right digital flows so that you can maximize the return on the financial return on that returned inventory, and really in a couple of ways. So one, if it's resellable, which could be resellable as a stock and immediately goes back into good inventory. You want to be able to identify that, get it back into the condition, and get it back into a sellable status as quickly as possible. To be able to make it available on your site. Second is if it's available for sale in a secondary channel, whether that's through a different type of retail partner or a B grade item, but that return inventory, trying to maximize the value of that asset for your organization. And I think lastly, it's if it's not resellable, don't add any more cost to the process, right? Identify that as quickly as possible to be able to segment and divert that so that you're not spending more money, trying to, on inventory that you're not going to be able to recoup. But and sorry, returns a huge passion of mine, so I spent a lot of time talking about this for the last couple of years. But one of the things that personally I think doesn't get talked about enough is we talk about the process of returns and the complexity of identifying the product and separating it and so on, which is hugely complex and important. What I think doesn't get talked enough about is the cost of reintroducing that material back into your forward supply chain to make it sellable. Almost all of our forward supply chains are built for inbound from manufacturing. They're in sealed cases with multiple units, and that's how our forward supply chains and fulfillment centers are built. For inventory coming from returns, it's a different challenge. It's a different process. So when you think about returns, it's not just about the return. It doesn't stop at the disposition, but how do you design that workflow and design that process end to end to make sure you're efficient all the way through the resale and fulfillment of that returned good. It's like I said, it's something I don't think is talked enough about. That's incredibly important and impactful for all of us here on the phone.
Yeah, definitely a key topic for our audience here. Let me ask a final question, and this question is for you, Rick. The question is, when we try to acquire any kind of automation, the expensive options are for the most part outside the USA. Do you see this changing anytime soon?
So when it comes to manufacturers, especially electronics, unfortunately, there's not a lot of onshore companies that make those components. They are made in other countries. They are, and as you know, included in the question, they are at a lower cost. So we're starting to see more and more assembly, if you will, in the U.S. or near shore, but the components still end up coming from offshore. I would say the quickest or fastest growing companies today from the product side, are the chip companies or companies that deal with AI. Well, again, they've chosen their sites to be offshore. So even though Geek Plus is a Chinese company, but we have a lot of manufacturing of our particular products in China. We actually have robots building robots, so it's not all about the cost of labor. It's the ability to obtain the materials needed to build these machines. So even if we were to send the components over and to build a factory that can do or duplicate how we're doing it, would be, for us right now, would be a considerable cost. Now, when it comes to steel, for those of you in the manufacturing side, this is something you're very familiar with, is the constant fluctuation of steel costs, right? In every quote that involves steel, if you're buying even rack, something as simple as rack, there's always something in that proposal that the disclaimer that says the actual price will be when we actually go to acquire the steel to build your rack is going to be subject to the particular price for steel at that particular time. Now, for whatever reason, offshore, they don't seem to be impacted by that fluctuation as much. They're able to, they have larger amounts of that material acquired. So when they quote a price, that price stands firm until your product is delivered. So there's actually less variance at time of delivery. Will that change? The way that taxation works, the way that duty works, a lot of the regulations work that are in the U.S., they're quite different than they are from offshore. So there's really no simple answer to this until, because even when we buy a car today that supposedly is one of the major U.S. brands, well, the engine that's in that car probably came from offshore and was brought into the U.S. and as part of that assembly. So do I see it changing anytime soon? What's the definition of soon? I think there's a trend. We see it go back and forth to, trying to do more and more domestically. But, I think unfortunately that, regulations sometimes makes it very difficult to start up these companies where in other parts of the world, you can do something almost immediately, overnight. You're not burdened with some of these things. So we need to see some changes as far as the way that we allow companies to open and start the ability to build these products very quickly.
Thanks, Rick. And let me be mindful of time since we only have a minute left. So let me start by first thanking the panelists. Let's give a virtual round of applause to our panel of experts for a very insightful discussion. I hope you've got a lot of value from it. But as we conclude, let's reflect on the critical role of outsourcing, warehousing, and distribution. The pandemic accelerated the rate of growth and innovation in the warehousing and distribution industry, spurring a major capital investment by established logistics providers, allowing them to lower operating costs while improving customer experience. And this gave rise to the importance of outsourcing logistics and distribution, because for most companies, logistics is not their core competency, nor do they have the ability to make major investments in technology and automation. So whether you're a company that already outsources warehousing and distribution, or you're at the stage where outsourcing may be the next logical step, the important thing is to be informed about the variability in the solutions available. And I think our panelists did a really good job of providing you with some insight on that front. I'll end with this. So we've mentioned UPS Global Logistics and Distribution a number of times during this webinar. We are one of the very few truly end-to-end logistics providers. If you're interested in learning more about our solutions, we will post a link in the chat where you can arrange to speak with one of our experts. And I'll mention that this webinar is recorded, so you can go back and watch it again. And you can also access the answered questions that we were unable to get to from the Q&A section. So again, thank you to our expert panelists for joining this webinar, and thank you to you out there for tuning in. Thank you very much.